Drop that ship! Blast them!
Hello, my friends, and welcome to our second episode of Armor Party. I am your host, Mike Forster, and before we get started with my second guest, I just wanted to stop and say thank you so much to everyone who liked, commented, shared the podcast with John Rodriguez. As we're getting this podcast off the ground, it means the world to know that we're putting out content that means something to people. And for the people that we have on the show, interact with them. Let them know that you enjoyed their conversation because they're just like you. They're just like me. They're bringing Star Wars to life. If there's someone that you'd love to see on the show, feel free to let us know. We have a couple guests lined up, but we really want to make this pretty fluid. So reach out, let us know who we should talk to. I'm sure we'd agree. And with no further ado, let's kick this second conversation off. I'm very excited to bring you this episode. Our guest today joins us from the Panhandle of Florida. He's a father and a veteran, and what started as a side hobby to satisfy his inner nerd turned into a full-time job for this talented Sith of the seams. Mike Quiñones, welcome to the Armor Party.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.
So, Mike, as we get started here, so kind of give us just a little bit of background. So you're in the Panhandle, and are you in one of the squads? What costuming club are you part of?
So we are, of course, Florida Garrison. Our squad is the Parge squad. And then, of course, I'm with the Rebel Legion, is the Rakura base here. And I haven't dabbled in the Mandal Mercs yet. I got my Mandalorian costume, but I just haven't made it there yet. But yeah, my business got me going pretty busy.
Well, I've definitely got to talk about that. So Mike started a business it's called the Darkside Closet. If you haven't checked them out, you have to see his work because it's absolutely incredible. It's been one of my favorites, and I love that it's right here in the States because, you know, I can see the updates. I can see how much you're making. I can see who you're working on, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But before we get into that, Mike, what's your Star Wars story, man? Like, how did all this craziness get started?
It started with episode 3. I mean, I'm older, but not that old when the originals came out. I'm sorry, not episode 3, episode 1. So when that came out, me and my brother went out to the movies, and we saw it there. Man, I fell in love with Maul, and then that whole story. And he's like, my brother's older. And he's like, well, let's go back and watch the rest of them, and that's when I fell in love with them there. And it kind of, I was always a Star Wars fan.
Sure.
Growing up. The whole costuming thing didn't really play out until episode 7 came out when, it started popping back off with Star Wars. It's getting really popular again. I like that Kylo Ren costume. I was like, man, that's pretty sick helmet. And then, so it started off from there. Was making costumes and stuff like that. But yeah, it was episode 1 there that started this whole Star Wars venture, I guess I should say.
Yeah, so the Phantom Menace turned into the Phantom Thread, and then eventually led you up to this point. So give us a little bit of background on Darkside Closet. If you don't know, they are a sewing specialty shop among other props, but most popular for you is a lot of the undersuits and the capes and all that kind of stuff. So how did you kind of find your niche? Was it the Kylo Ren costume, or how did you find yourself?
That's where it all started. Yeah, that's where it actually all started, was Kylo Ren. I know everybody's like, hey, where'd you learn to sew? Did your mom or your grandma? I was like, no, I actually learned when I was in the Navy. I was a parachute rigger, so our job was to repair parachutes, life preservers, all the cool stuff, which I never did. I was sitting there making tool pouches and sewing on patches for, flight, the pilots and stuff like that. So that's where I learned how to sew. But yeah, so this whole costuming stuff started with my Kylo Ren. I had made the costume, man. I made that costume maybe like 5 different times with different materials, and then finally I got it to where I really enjoyed it. And then it's just people started asking me, hey, well, can you make me one? I was like, well, yeah, sure, I can definitely do that. And then it went on to a shore trooper and all the soft parts for the shore trooper stuff. And like, hey man, that's really nice, man. Can you make me one? It's like, yeah. So I kind of just started my Facebook page from there just to kind of keep track. And honestly, man, it just kept growing and growing. Without 3-4 years later, here I am doing it full time now.
So were you a costume club member? Like, did that transition, like, did you know about the costume clubs? Did you know about the Legion before you started getting into this? Or was this kind of like, I'm just going to build this costume, and then someone saw you and was like, hey, have you ever considered joining? Or like, what was your awareness of like the costuming clubs?
So that's where, I didn't know too much about the 501st when I started building my costume. I just kind of wanted to build it for myself. And it was, going out to Halloween and Comic-Cons and stuff like that. Eventually, as I got, into my third and fourth time of making that Kylo Ren costume, I got into more details, and then I found about the 501st and all the stuff that they offered and the reference pictures, and that's where I was like, well, dang, man, this is so cool, all the stuff that they do, the charity, man, and there's a lot more people that, it's just not Comic-Cons and Halloween.
Right.
I mean, even tonight I'm going to a parade that we're going to do as well, dressing up, and it's just like, it was really piqued my interest to join, and it was so awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And I always find it's fascinating when people kind of just start building a costume, or you run into someone that's like, yeah, I watched some YouTube tutorials, and they almost kind of seem like, when you let them know that there are these forums that have this, gosh.
The plethora of knowledge, like
it's incredible,
crazy.
Isn't it? So it always makes me appreciate when people just kind of go for it without having this prior knowledge that there's a club who in some ways has done a lot of the work. But I absolutely love that tenacity just to say, hey, I'm going to go for it. So what I've got to ask you then is, so you originally started as repairing parachutes and doing all that kind of stuff, just kind of making your way around a sewing machine is a lot different than eventually getting into patterning and all that. So what did you kind of learn in that process of actually building clothing versus, just saying, I got to repair a piece here and stitch up a patch here. And like, what was that transition?
Yeah. That was always, a trial and error kind of situation with me. I mean, honestly, everything I've done so far is kind of self-taught. Still to this day, I still draw out each pattern because everything here is made custom, to each person. That's why it kind of takes too long, because, each thing is directly to that person's measurements. So trying to follow a pattern for that is a little bit difficult, yeah. But usually I end up just drawing it out, by hand each time I do it. I mean, I got a little box full of patterns that kind of will work with everybody, but most of the stuff here, man, it's just all hand drawn and measured and remeasured again and stuff like that.
Man, this is a true fan shop. I'm like loving this because you do see some people that their day job transitioned into their part-time job, right? And so like for me with my side business, Hondo Supply, it's like I'm a graphic designer in my day job. So it makes sense that I'm able to kind of transition over and make graphics just for Star Wars, something that I like. But I love this story of you have this sewing machine and you're like, hey, I think I'm going to start making costumes with it. So I love this. This is so awesome. And you said before, so your current, probably most popular kits that you sell are, you can do Kylos, and you said Shore Troopers, Death Troopers, and the Mando suits.
Yeah, I haven't done... My Kylo's kind of died off. It hasn't been a while since I made one. Every once in a while, I'll get a customer that kind of wants one, but to kind of fit that in too, it's just, I tell them the materials are expensive, and just to order for one Kylo suit's really not kind of helpful to me here.
Sure.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I got the Shore Trooper, the Tank Trooper, pretty much all of Rogue One troopers. Once I fell in love with Rogue One. I mean, the Shore Trooper is my all favorite. But then after that, the Mandalorian came out, and honestly, I wasn't even going to touch those. I was like, man, that's just too much work. I was like, I don't even want to do it. I started sourcing out like myself, other people to make the soft parts, and I was like, you know what? Let me just give it a shot. And eventually, it came out. I'm not going to brag about myself, but it did come out really good.
It is good. You can brag, Mike.
And then from then on, it's just people like said, hey, well, can you make me one? I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go ahead and start my Mandalorian line and stuff like that. So it just kicked off from there. And now, so honestly, my Death Trooper was like my top seller. It was just like going crazy. And till this day, I still want to redo my Death Trooper. And then with all the new upgrades that I've done now. But now the Mandalorian, with that coming out, there's just a handful of good quality costumes out there. And thankfully we're one, and it's just been skyrocketing. So awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think so obviously you and I can nerd out over the details. I think what most people don't really understand is Rogue One was such a kickoff for so many things because, you know, we had seen the original trilogy troopers get that modern update, right? And if you would see in 4K the original trilogy stormtroopers, they are just destroyed. You know, the bindings of them, the paint is chipping. They look horrible.
Gaff tape, everything, yeah.
Everything, right? And so like it's so interesting seeing the design decisions that Glenn Dillon and those guys had made where, you know, they have now the biggest thing I think is, and you can speak to this better, but it's that ribbing in the undersuit that almost looks like a gasket, right? And so it's really cool to see how it used to just be basically an undersuit that was almost like a wetsuit undersuit that the original trilogy troopers wore, but now it has all these little details underneath the armor to look like a vacuum spacesuit, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so how was that for you? And I've got to ask because I love your work so much and I love exactly like you said, it's those details. How do you do research on a kit that just comes out? Like what is that process like? Are you screen grabbing stuff? Are you measuring? Like how is it just trial and error? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's literally, you know, watching the show on my TV here and then kind of, you know, screen grabbing and stuff like that. Google searching, tremendous Google searching, you know, of different angles and stuff that you can get to see where this ribbing was or this kind of stitching goes here or whatever. And then going to find the fabric. I mean, that takes days and days of researching. I mean, I guess some people don't really understand that. They're like, hey, you know, I got this new project here. Can you make it for me? And I know it sounds easy, but, you know, to get the quality that I would like to put out, and to find the exact fabric they use, the thread color, you know, all that, and then drawing the pattern out and stuff like. Because I mean, obviously, you're not going to find this pattern online anywhere where you can just kind of print it out, put it on the fabric, and cut it out. So you know, most of the time, you just got to make your own patterns and stuff like that, or draw it out by hand every time.
Yeah, Disney certainly doesn't release these things. It's not like you know, they're not putting out the, you know, here's how to make the guide. You know, it's like they'll release everything else they can, you know, sell in that way of appreciation, but not the actual, you know, the IP. And what I think is really cool about the costuming community is that now at this point there are fans who originally were making this stuff that are now helping with the shows. And so I think it's really cool that we've kind of come full circle to realize that the costumers are awesome. Just as much a part of this community.
Yeah, exactly, man. And then even to this day, if I see the costume designer's name, I go research them. If they got an Instagram or Facebook page, I'm following them to see if they have any teaser pics or anything like that. So, and it is awesome to see like the fans out there actually getting to work for Star Wars too. I mean, that's really awesome. It keeps my hopes up high. Yeah.
And I hope honestly that one day that does end up being something for you, Mike, because I really do think that you have one of the. I'm building a Din Djarin right now, a Beskar version myself, and I had purchased a undersuit from Aaron Lander who passed away. And just kind of seeing,
he did great work too.
Oh, for sure. And it was, you know, so I have this kit and I feel bad, you know, dyeing it because I originally was going to do, you know, the scavenger armor. And then eventually I wanted to do the Beskar. And so tell a little bit about, I think what most people, when you start to get into costuming, you look at Star Wars in a completely different way. And it's like your nerd radar goes off and you're going, wait a minute. The episode 1, episode 2 undersuit was gray. The 3 and 4 are brown. Like, you know, it's kind of like is the dress blue or black. And I think that's been the most hilarious argument I've seen in Mandalorian costuming. But like, how, you know, how do you? What's your take on that? Like, you know, is it dyes? Is it the grading? I mean, how do you truly like make a call to say this is thread count? Do you photograph it? Do you look at it? Like, how do you make these decisions?
Yeah, it's just basically whenever I find, I mean, I got like a binder here, man. It's just like full of just samples that have been sent to me. That way I can pick the right fabric that I end up choosing with. But yeah, with that whole Mandalorian, the one thing I kept saying was, it's just, this was a totally different way of filming, you know, because they had that volume, and it was nothing but LED lights, LED screens, you know, to do the whole background. And so I kind of think that threw a lot of lighting off, because once you go out and I can't remember what episode it was where he teamed up with Boba, and then they took the baby and stuff like that. They were actually out in the field, or, you know, outside filming that episode, and then there you can see it, you know, it's definitely like a darker brown kind of color.
It was the Simi Valley episode with Robert Rodriguez. Yeah, where the Dark Troopers take Grogu. Yeah.
So that was actually nice to see them actually outside filming and stuff. And I'm sure they've done it before, but I think that most of that episode was outside, which was really cool. And that's where I paid attention to, was kind of looking at that one too. But then again, that was season 2, and with the 501st, at that time, season 2, he's a good guy. He goes off to the Rebel Legion.
Right. Which is always funny. The politics of where these characters end up according to their story arc, right?
Yeah. I'd say just like, man, season 1, season 2, either way, he's the same character. I was like, you know, it shouldn't matter what stitching goes with this one or what color goes with that one. I mean, in the end, you're going to look like the character, and then you're doing a great cause, you know, with the club. So, but yeah, back with the samples, man, honestly, it was just tons of research, and then finding, all the samples coming in, and then finding that perfect one. I mean, it just takes, like, honestly, days and weeks.
And that process, that I think is what most people don't understand. I mean, what I want to ask too, Mike, is, you know, the costuming community, and especially you go into a different realm when you start taking people's money for commissions. Mm-hmm. And I have to applaud you, because you are oftentimes, man, you're like, what, 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6 weeks out in terms of the wait list, right? You're that busy.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, honestly, it just gets busy. And doing this full time, I didn't know what to expect, what to say. And then from working from home and like that, and dealing with the kids, and then also trying to, have time for my family as well, as much as we can. Right. But I mean, honestly, I try to work, like I said, sun up, sun down here. And like most of this, it just really takes time, because each one is custom made. We don't have like really a size chart for you to pick, and you're like, oh, well, let me guess. Let me make sure. Let me get an extra large, just in case. Here, you're going to make sure, and I'm going to make sure it fits you. If it doesn't fit you, I always say send it back. We'll either make you a new one, or, if we can fix it, we can definitely fix it. You're going to get what you paid for here. I know it may take a little bit longer, but you're definitely going to get that quality that you paid for.
Well, and that's what I think is, like I said, when you start taking people's money, and you get this wait list, and the policies, because we know that they're fan makers who are making this stuff. The fans who are making these costumes just understand, most of them at least, understand that this process takes time, right? And exactly you said, it's a custom thing that's made for your body. It's not off the shelf. You don't have 90 of these kits sitting in your closet ready to sell. And the process of doing that, we see a lot of stuff where people, they don't want to spend any of their own money. And so they do pre-orders to basically buy the stock of whatever they need to buy, and then they go through and do it. And oftentimes they don't consider that something could go wrong, right? And then all of a sudden those lead times are backed up. And I've noticed it a lot in the prop community, where sometimes your reputation can mean everything, and you're so transparent about being on who you're working for this week, who's up next. And I think it gives a lot of, it gives a lot of comfort for your customers to say, okay, the communication is good, because some of these other prop makers, it's like you give them money and you have no idea where they're at, because
where you're at,
right, and their communication isn't great. So was that your process of how you transition and really handle this many waves of costumes for people and this many orders? Was that kind of a process in which you had to learn the hard way, or was that kind of how you've always wanted to run your business?
No, I mean, it was just everything, learning as you go, so to say, doing this. Um, the whole wait list, kind of thing, and for most folks, everyone is understanding, and I thank everyone for that. And like I said, I try to be as most transparent as I can, because I mean, I know how it feels to be on the other side waiting for something.
Right.
And, it's just, I want to make sure everyone feels comfortable coming to me, and giving me, it's not a cheap hobby. Definitely
Right.
not. And then that's a lot of money that, hard-earned money that people are forking out there. And so I want to make sure everyone is going to be taken care of, and, they know exactly, where they're at, or somewhat know where they're at, or where we're at working on, our waiting list kind of thing. And I mean, and I get a whole bunch of good feedback about that, and I love it. And like I said, I love the community, because they are, most of them, 99% of them are very, very understanding. And when it comes down to it too, I know people are so excited to get their costumes, and I'll even work with some of them. If you need it by the end of the month, or I know it's taking a little bit longer than we said, because stuff does come up. Unfortunately, that's the way life is. But I'll work with you. And it's just, I just like helping other people's and being part of other people's builds and costumes. I just love seeing my work out there, and I'm like, man, that looks so good. I mean, it looks better than mine, and I love saying that most of the time.
Well, I think it's hilarious though at the costuming community, because we're so many of us are so dedicated to those details. It cracks me up a little bit at how people will have no problem spending so much money on a sideshow collectible, awesome hot toy figure that they've made 2,000 of it. People are like, "Oh, I bought this $400 figure, no problem." And then you're making a custom costume built to their body, and it's like, I don't know if I can spend that money. I'm like, come on, if you're a nerd like us, this, like you said, this hobby is not cheap, but it definitely makes you realize like what you're really getting out of it. Because if you go to Galaxy's Edge, you're spending however much money for a size medium tunic for a Jedi, versus a little bit more, you could get a custom suit made to yourself. It's like, that's incredible. So I think it's just awesome to see your offerings, and also how high the quality for these suits. And I really am excited to see what more comes out of the Book of Boba Fett, Bad Batch, everything that's coming out, because it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan, even better time to be a costumer. I feel like, man, we're just adding awesomeness to our repertoire of stuff that goes onto our build list,
Oh yeah. Yep. I'm so excited. And especially the Ahsoka. I got my wife's Ahsoka, started. So my customers come first. I always try to, but my wife's costume is sitting over there about 60% done. There's a few pieces that I have ordered, like her headpiece, that I definitely don't have time to make myself. And I understand. That one's actually taken long to come in too, but I'm not going to sit there and bug because I know exactly what she's going through making those things, and, and dealing with the customers and stuff. So as long as she needs, just go ahead and take it, because it's all about the quality. I'll definitely wait and pay for the quality.
100%. So let's get into a little bit of nitty gritty too with you, Mike. What's your equipment setup? Because for me, I love building the hard armor. I'll buy it from a person that either I like their business, or I like the look of their stuff. But the sewing part, man, I always think between an officer, like making myself a hat or doing a shirt or something, that is 100% my white whale, is learning how to sew. And like, what would you say as far as getting into it and equipment? Like, what's your setup, or like, what do you have for recommendations?
So what I always say, man, being a sewer, you always got to think backwards, because you're always thinking, before I sew these two pieces together, I got to sew this together, flip it, turn it, and then sew it. It's just a lot of thinking and drawing out on boards and making sure everything fits there. So as for sewing, the machines, I got two down here. I got one workhorse here. I literally got 5-6 sewing machines. Of course, to do the edging, the serger, and then I got a workhorse here that kind of sews everything together. And then I actually just acquired a Juki that does, all my top stitching and throws through all my leather work and my double size canvas and stuff like that. But yeah, 5-6 sewing machines is I never never thought I owned this many sewing machines at all. But yeah, man, it's just it's a pretty good little shop here.
That's awesome. So if someone's looking to get into, and I'm glad that you brought up the leather point, because I think for people who don't know the difference, leather is like you're kind of in a different world as far as, there's a heavy duty sewing machine, and then there's a machine that's designed to do leather, and that's because the thicknesses can be varied. And so if you could kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown. If I go into, one of my big box stores and I buy the heaviest duty sewing machine, what am I going to get compared to what it would take for me to say, build let's say a Dinjarin undersuit or a custom smuggler jacket or something like that? What would I need to do that as far as machines go?
I mean, it all depends. There's a lot of great machines out there. Kanso, there's Genome Brothers. Usually what I go for is what they all do. I mean it all does like the research, and that's why I picked that I have this Genome 412 QDC. That one does all kinds of weird stitching, odd stitching and stuff like that. The fancy stitching, my serger stitching. And then I needed something to go through, like you said, heavy duty stuff, leathers, the duck canvas that I have, because I fold that duck canvas, over 3 or 4 times, and I need something to do that. And that's why I picked up my Juki HD that I have in the background right here. That one it's a little pricey. That was about $1,000 for that one, but man, it was definitely worth a penny. And I mean that's what I actually learned on it's an industrial sewing machine in the military. Is they had all those sewing machines, because going through what we had to go through to pierce the material, the naga hide and all that stuff that they used to repair for the life preservers and all that stuff.
Right.
Is definitely something you needed. An HDA. But honestly, it's out there. Just like I said, there's a lot of good brands out there that make good sewing machines. It really does depend on what kind of style or what you're actually looking for.
Right, and there's also, as far as it can be overwhelming in terms of looking for leathers or even especially with the Dinjarin, it's like, man, those leg wraps that he has, that's like 4 or 5 different leathers on there, right? And it kind of seems like some of them were, so we know that there's 3 stunt guys and then Pedro himself, so they probably have about 5 or 6 of those suits, but it looks like they had some swatches in the back and said, we have enough to make some leg wraps, let's throw it together. And I almost think in ways they kind of do it to punk the costuming community, as like, oh, good luck with this one, and that always kind of makes me laugh. But I feel like just kind of seeing and understanding that some of these fabrics, especially, and just learning 6 ounce, 8 ounce cotton, twill, cavalry twill, all of these fabrics,
all that.
Like how do you learn, is it just been through just touching different materials, or like how do you can you identify fabrics at this point because you've been doing it for so long?
At the most point, yeah, I guess so to say. I'm not going to say I'm a true expert at identifying, fabric, this kind of silk or that kind of silk or this kind of cotton or this twill, and stuff like that. But it's literally, I like Joann's, and I'll go up and down the aisle of Joann's, just, with my phone, with all my pictures, and just looking to see what I can find that looks similar and stuff like that. And then it's also from other costume makers as well, giving references and giving their 2 cents about what they think the material is, and that's awesome, man. And being a part of the community, how we kind of help out each other, it's pretty cool, and find out all those little details. And
oh yeah, and I'm laughing at the fact that that's your Jedi power, Mike, is you walk in, you're like, oh, that guy's he has cavalry twill. I bet you he's a big deal. Which is very useful in case you're trying to figure out if someone's undercover. But to what you just brought up, I think it's a great topic to talk about. This community is most people, I would say the majority of the community, is so great about sharing resources and these
Yeah.
research threads. And I think it's really cool because at the end of the day, of course, there are competitors in terms of who offers different products. And, I don't think there's any single person that makes one single costume that no one else can touch. But it's really cool to see how willing and open this community is to share the research, and that no one's really gatekeeping with it because they understand that, yeah, there is a certain amount of tenacity that it takes to actually build a business out of this, but also that we're all fans and that what we're doing is bringing Star Wars to life for our communities. And though it's easy to get hung up on the details, seeing a costume, a person in a Darth Vader costume, or seeing Din Djarin walk up with his Beskar helmet and his armor to a kid or to another adult that's a fan of this and see this character walk down the street, it's life-changing. It literally suspends your disbelief, and it's so cool. So, I mean, what do how, as far as how rewarding this community has been for you, are there things that you think that we could use more of, or do you think that we could focus on just keeping the topics open, sharing references, making each other better for our love of this?
Oh yeah, man. I try to help out myself as much as I can. Sometimes getting my fabric, I have to source like in bulk, so to say.
Right.
So when someone says, "Hey, where'd you get that fabric?" I'll let them know, but you got to have like your tax ID, number and stuff like that to order it and kind of stuff. And there's been times where like, well, hey, can I just buy the fabric? I'm like, sure. You're more than, if you just want to buy the fabric from me, here you go. I think I've sent a few fabrics out there where it was,
you sent me my cape. You sent me my cape for my Din. So, but that was super cool of you. I know that some builders would be like, "Ah, man, I got to make it for you." But you were like, "Yeah, how much? Give me your height, and I'll send you a swatch." And I think it shows that obviously you're a costumer first before you're a boilerplate business guy. It's like you're wanting to see more people excited about building costumes, and I think that comes across in your business model for sure.
But yeah, man, like I said, the community is so awesome, and it's a majority of them. I know there's a few little sticklers out there, but
sure.
But I mean, they love to help out, and I love seeing that, and that's the way I perceive myself too. Is I love, even though you're going to come to me to make it, I'm happy that more enjoyable to make it for you and to be a part of that costume, to see your costume come together, and I love getting stuff. I mean, there's customers that sent me pictures of themselves in their costumes saying thank you, and I'm like, I frame them up, man. I frame them up in here. I love it, man. It's so cool. It's so cool, and I love seeing pictures being sent to me via messages and stuff like that. Of their costume already built, and oh man, it's so cool, and I love helping them out. And there's a lot of people out there that do the same thing.
Well, and another thing that I wanted to ask you too is you're constantly involved with the charity work that goes on with either fundraising or teaming up with other armor makers, and I think for a lot of people, it's easy for us to really geek out about the costumes because we are such fans of not only this saga, but also individual characters and how they make us feel. But you find that connective thing between a lot of the costuming clubs and their members is that the charity aspect is something that they never thought they would be as involved in. And and I know that you said that was kind of a reason for learning more about why this, the costuming clubs are awesome. But what was it for you that kind of said, yeah, I can totally get on board with this because the message is one of positivity and it's one to help our communities?
Well, I mean, doing charity stuff has always been a part. Being in the military, we always did a whole bunch of charity stuff like that. So I was always, dabbling in it. Obviously now, doing the costuming and stuff like that. To me, it's awesome just to see the reaction of it. I mean, like I said, most of it's the kids and of course the big kids, the big old smiles that they've seen. I mean, I have had this grown man, I was in my Chewbacca coming up and just like literally running full force just to give me a hug. And I was like, this is so cool. And it was really just seeing those and stuff like that, bringing the smiles that Star Wars can bring to everybody was really got me turned on to it. I was like, man, this is so cool. Just to have these fans and have these people see us on TV and we can bring that to them. And, whether they're having a bad day or, in a bad situation and stuff like that, we can definitely bring smiles to them and make their day, that day, better for them. and that's what I really, really enjoy with the cherry.
Is there
and
a
stuff.
troop that you remember specifically that really like left an impact on you, that just really says, you think about it, and I always crack up with people because this hobby, Mike, agree with me on this because I know that you will, makes no sense for any normal person who wants to have hobbies. And, you're going, how much do I spend on this? And I wear them how many times a year? Like, this makes no sense. This is not for normal people. But you get those moments that really seem to make all of this make sense. And if it affects just one person, you go, it doesn't matter the cost. This changed this person's life in that moment. Do you have a troop that you remember? I know that you're a Chewbacca, and people obviously react much differently to Chewbacca than they do to other characters. But what, if you have a story that you can think of, I'd love to hear it.
So there's actually two that I like. There was my very, very first troop, and it was actually with Kylo Ren.
Okay.
And that was my first troop, is always going to be my memory. And that's where I met a good friend of mine, Levon, who now is my space mom. She's so talented as well. But we did this troop, and it was at a library, and it was just her and I. And it was just, of course, it was just really good to see all the kids really, really enthused about Star Wars. And their smiles, and I had this one little girl that would just follow me wherever I went, and she was, all dressed in black, and they had the foam noodles that were lightsabers and stuff like that, and she was like, I want to be your apprentice, and I had my voice changed. I was like, yes, kind of thing, and that was really, really good, and then bringing the smiles to the kids' faces was really enjoyable. And the second one was Chewie, and Chewie's just a lovable character. And then we went to a school, and it was a good friend of mine's class. And then just as soon as you walk in, it was nice to see all the kids smile again. And honestly, that's what I love my kids and stuff like that. And it was good just to bring the smiles to everyone's faces is what I'm really, really happy about.
I love that. Did you build your Chewbacca yourself?
I did most of it. The mask, though, I wouldn't even want to try that.
Sure.
I know it's time consuming. I did buy that, but yeah, the rest of the stuff, the top, the bottoms, and then my boots. Good old. I like watching Adam Savage and tested, and I saw his new style boots, so I made my boots to him, which was really cool as well. So, and then the bandolier I made myself.
Well, people are gonna be mad if I don't at least ask you the process of making a Wookiee costume. Is that I've seen them be mesh, almost like mesh suits, and then individually wrung hair. Like, what is that process? How the heck do you make that?
Yeah, man, that's what it starts off with, just a mesh shirt and pants, and then you hook and latch each hair. You get like a pinch of synthetic hair, and like, so you just go through, not each hole, but it's spaced out, and it was about 7 months worth of work of hook and latching and hair all over my house. After that. So my wife was extremely excited when I was done, because she was tired of picking up Chewy hairballs throughout the house.
Is there a golden retriever in the house? No. That's a Wookiee from Kashyyyk.
When did we get a dog? I'm like, oh man, but yeah, it was a process. It was enjoyable. I documented everything, and oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite costumes to wear. Of course, everyone loves Chewie. It's just hard to beat him. He's just so cool. And until this day, I'm upset because I can't take a picture with Chewie because I have to be in the costume.
Right.
So everybody else around me is having, fun with Chewie, and I'm just like, man, I want to take a picture with Chewie. So I'm waiting for this one day where someone will come dress up in my Chewie costume just so I can take a picture with them.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, how tall are you, Mike? I guess we've also got to know that. I assume you're not as tall as a Wookiee.
No, so I'm 6 foot, 72 inches, and then with the boots and everything, it puts me right at 7 feet, 7'1", I think it was last time I measured. But yeah, I think their minimum requirements is 7 foot, 7 and then 7-4. I mean, I don't know. I've seen some really tall Wookiees.
Sure. Well, so I guess or you go to Batu, right? You go to Galaxy's Edge, and when you can go and hug Chewie again, you'll at least get a picture with Chewie, right?
Yeah. Me and my wife went a few months ago, and unfortunately with COVID, they had him up in in the stands or in the little prop area that they had. But it was cool. I had like a little moment with him. I was dressed up like a somewhat Imperial officer, with my hat and my rank badge and stuff like that. He saw me, and he did, he looked at his eyes and then pointed at me like he's going to be watching me. I was like, that's pretty cool. I can have that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so like, and for you, like, are you one of those people who, you go to Batu and you look at all the costumes and what's really quite cool about what they've done at Galaxy's Edge is, they make the characters, the cast members really look like they fit into that building. There's weathering, there's different roles. I mean, do you look at that stuff and think, man, I got, if I ever got a corporate job like this,
I made a business trip out of it. I went there and I literally was looking at the stormtroopers and trying to get as close as I could to them to take pictures of their gaskets and how they would attach, the armor to it. And then all the costumes that they had, I was just there just like doing research. And my wife's like, are you going to enjoy the park anytime soon? I'm like, I got to do the research.
It's a moving mannequin.
Yeah, right. I don't think I'm ever going to get this close to anything else. I was like, come on. But yeah, we, eventually enjoyed it and stuff like that. But the way they did Batu, man, oh my gosh, it was out of this world. It felt like I was in the Star Wars show. It was so cool.
Well, I hope that eventually they have I think for, because you're obviously familiar, you're in Florida, you're familiar with like the Disney bound concept, like people who dress up. Right. So, like how, and I see that as an introduction for some people who want to get into sewing. And there are a couple people who release, who release their patterns online or they do something where people could eventually say, okay, start with like a tunic that's kind of flowy and, stitch here and stitch here. And I could see that would be kind of an intro for someone to want to build a Star Wars style, not a particular costume so that it doesn't get judged on that same level of character. But I think Batu bounding is actually seems like a cool way to get started into sewing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I mean, we did our little Imperial officer kind of thing. And then after that, I wore like racing shirts. We only did like that Batu bounding one day because it got hot. It got hot real quick. But yeah, man, you see other people out there doing the same thing. It was so cool. And a funny story is me and my wife, when we went out there, we were just kind of walking around looking at everything. And we had a family come up to us asking, hey, where can we get this at? Or my bad. It was like, where are the restrooms at? And then it was the husband that came up, and I was like, I don't know.
I don't work here.
The wife was like, babe, they don't work here. Well, look at them. Yes, they do. They work here. I was like, sir, we don't work here. I was like, we're just visiting. And then he kind of just had this shocked face, didn't say anything, turned around and just walked away.
Oh, I'm laughing because he thought, well, I'm sitting here in my dungarees, and why would anybody else be wearing this if they don't work here?
Yeah, I had, I look like the Imperial officer. I had my hat, my rank badge, and everything like that. My wife was the same way too. And he was like, well, why would you be dressing up like this? And, it's kind of funny to the normal people, you're here wearing that. Why would you be wearing that here at this hot day? I guess so.
You snuck him a business card. Well, check me out. You might have heard of me.
But man, me and my wife were cracking up because he was so concerned that we worked there. Like, no, they do work here.
And then you said, no, we don't. And they said, that's what they're supposed to say. We're on Batu. They don't acknowledge other parts of the park. This is like a 4D chess game here. Oh, I'm laughing at that. That's awesome. Man. Well, Mike, I just want to appreciate your time for talking with us. And, the podcast is new, so I love getting different guests on and people that I've admired since I've been in the costuming community. And your work is so fantastic. So why don't we wrap this up? We'll do a lightning round, and then we'll do a sign off. And how does that sound?
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's get a lightning round going. Okay, if you could wear one costume, regardless of cost, what would it be?
My Chewbacca. That's why I made it. I had to.
That is a good answer. That absolutely is a good answer. The next question is, who has better costumes, the good guys or the bad guys?
Good bad guys, definitely.
Any particular reason, or you just like the style?
I just like the armor. I love the Stormtrooper armor and stuff like that. Everything looks better.
And you bat for both sides of the team. You're Chewie and you're Shore Trooper, right? You're like you're stuck in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Mike, would you rather have a lightsaber or a blaster at your side?
Oh, lightsaber. Definitely. I like the lightsabers.
You get to live on one planet for the rest of your day. What's your pick? All Star Wars universe. What's your pick?
Oh man, I would have to fall with Tatooine, man. I just like that. I know it's hot, but their gambling and stuff that they did, it just looked like a fun planet to be on. You know, all the stuff that the bartering and everything like that. It just looks like very, very fun.
This is saying a little bit about you, Mike. I feel like you're like, oh yeah, I like it hot. I like it largely uninhabitable, and I also like to be able to gamble. So this is good, Mike. Have you been to Vegas? I feel like it's the same place.
Yeah, right. I got weekend trips to Vegas constantly.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, the Hyatt at Mos Eisley. On that planet that you just picked on Tatooine, you get to pick one ship from Star Wars to use to get off planet when you got to leave. What ship do you pick?
Man, I know it's just new, but that Razor Crest, it grew on me. I absolutely love the Razor Crest. The look of it, the inside of it, it was just awesome. I love it. And I'm so PO'd that they blew it up. I was so mad, dude. So mad that they did that. I was like, are you kidding me? It was his own character. To me, it was his own character. I absolutely loved that Razor Crest, dude. It was so cool.
Well, they made sure that they pre-ordered all of the Hasbro stuff and all the Lego stuff, so everyone already bought it, and then it got blown up in the show, and they said, "Oh yeah, sorry about that."
Yeah, right.
Well, Mike, thank you again for your time, man. It's been so great to talk to you. I'm like I said, I am such a big fan of your work, and you run a business that's commendable. It does excellent work. The details are there, and you're super transparent about it. You pretty much check off all my boxes. And as someone who's received some of your products, I got to say I vouch for you. This is definitely not a sponsorship, but more an endorsement of your work. So, Mike, thanks for being on the Armor Party, man. We appreciate you. Where can people find you?
You can find me, of course, the Darkside Closet on Facebook. You can. We actually just got our Instagram going, the Darkside Closet, and then I have my personal Instagram called the Slushiest_Mando. We got a website coming soon. We just need to get our updated pictures as well. But yeah, man, I try my best here, and I'm definitely happy to be a part of this community.
Well, we're appreciative of your talents, and of course, thank you for your service to this country, and more so.
My pleasure.
Star Wars is forever. Anything else you got to say, Mike?
Hit it, Chewie.
And just like that, our second episode of Armor Party has come to an end. I'm your host, Mike Forster. Thank you for listening to Armor Party. Armor Party is a part of the Thank the Maker network. If you're looking for other content, especially in the Star Wars realm, we highly encourage you to give them a listen. You can find Armor Party wherever you listen to podcasts, and find us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and now on YouTube. Always remember, being an adult is boring, so you might as well wear some armor.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.